to get a parking space.
All right, everybody, we're live.
Can you just give me a second here to pull this up? All right, welcome to the October 28th, 2025 meeting of the Institutional Risk and Compliance Committee of the University of Rhode Island Board of Trustees. This meeting is being held in person with committee members participating remotely. At this time, interim board secretary Emily will conduct a roll call attendance to determine if a quorum is present. Please clearly respond present via WebEx or present in person when your name is called.
Robbie Luna, Matt Lenz,
Present.
Joseph Formicola,
Present via WebEx.
David Martirano,
Present via WebEx.
Ryan Estes,
Present via WebEx.
David Caprio, Michael Gray, and Mark Parlange.
Present via WebEx.
Awesome. And I know Board Chair Marco Cook and Vice Chair Armin Sabatoni are also present. Quorum is present. We'll call the meeting to order. Reminder to all members, for the benefit of our audience and the note taker, please clearly identify yourself whenever you comment, make a motion, or second to a motion. Participants using WebEx are required to keep their cameras on as remote members, and all persons present at the meeting location must be clearly audible and visible to each other. At this time, I would like to acknowledge that the University of Rhode Island occupies the traditional stopping grounds of the Narragansett Nation and the Niantic people. Are there any proposed amendments to the published agenda? All right, hearing none, the first order of business is approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the June 18th, 2025 meeting?
David
Joe, so
Martirano.
moved.
David
Joe,
Martirano.
second.
Second.
All right,
Jim.
awesome. Any discussion on the motion? There being no discussion, all in favor?
Yes.
Any noes? Any abstentions? All right, the motion to approve the minutes of the June 18th, 2025 committee meeting is approved. Next order of business is agenda item 2, discussion items. I will turn it over to Abby Benson for review of annual external financial audit reports.
Great, thanks. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. So today I'm going to turn it over to Mike Johns from CLA, who is our principal external auditing firm, to talk through the 2025 audit results. As a reminder, we address our audited financial statements in 2 committees on the board. So we reviewed the financial statements themselves with the Finance and Facilities Committee yesterday, and today is really about the audit itself. That's why we have Mike here. I do also want to acknowledge our AVP for Financial Operations and University Controller, Angela Miller, who is our primary point of contact for our financial audit. So she's also joining us today. With that, I will turn it over to Mike to walk through his presentation.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me. As Abby mentioned, I am Mike Johns. I'm the principal from CLA. I recognize some of the faces, but for those of you who I don't know. So what am I here to talk about today? We can advance the slide. We're here to talk about the 2025 audit process and really what we were engaged to do, the results of those procedures, and then just some emerging issues. So if we can go to the next slide, what was CLA engaged to do? So the audit process really starts with management and their responsibility to establish internal controls to ensure that the financial information is complete and accurate and without error. And they close the books, and then the CLA comes in and performs tests of those financial statements and the closing procedures. Based on those tests, we render an opinion on the financial statements. We also render an opinion under government auditing standards, which you'll see in that second bullet there. However, it should be pointed out that we do not express an opinion on the internal controls at the university. That does not happen during a financial statement audit. But if we came across any what we define as material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, then those would be reported in that second opinion letter under government auditing standards. If applicable, we'd issue the internal control letter identifying any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. We have what we call required governance communication letter. I'm going to go over some of those points in today's presentation, but you also have a formal letter. We're required to submit to the state what we call supplementary information. It's a informational packet with financial information that helps them prepare their financial statements. We do not express an opinion on that information other than it agrees in relation to the basic financial statements of the university. And the last bullet there, which is the single audit, that is the audit of federal compliance with major programs. This year, we have what we would call a pass from the state, in that the state selects the university's major programs, and none were selected this year for audit. We can advance to the next slide, please. The audit process itself, we're required to perform what's called a risk-based approach. So well in advance of year end, we have meetings with management to see if anything's changed. We have internal meetings to see what's changing in the industry with the general economic conditions. We perform some analytical procedures, and based on all that information, we perform a risk assessment or a heat map. If something were to go wrong, where is it more likely that it could go wrong? And we spend more time with the higher risk areas and less time with the lower risk areas. The bullets on this slide really are just an overview, not an all-encompassing picture of all the audit tests and procedures we performed. But going over a couple of them, internal controls, we do test controls to enable us to do our substantive work. And those controls are tested over the payroll disbursement cycle, the general disbursement cycle. We also have CLA IT specialists come in and look at the internal controls over general IT controls over the financial systems. The financial statements include estimates, and we are required to look at the inputs into those estimates if they're prepared in accordance with the corresponding accounting standards, if they appear to be biased at all. Property and equipment's a very large number. We look at fixed asset additions, and we'll make a sample and test the additions to supporting invoices and approvals, look at and recalculate some depreciation expense. The lease and subsist information and technology arrangements, again, a bit of a complicated area in the accounting world, but we look at the underlying contracts to make sure they meet the definitions for recognition of an asset and a liability. Revenue recognition in all entities in any financial statement audit is always a high risk, and we perform various tests on cutoff and does revenue exist, and was it recorded in the proper period. You have some pension and other post-employment benefit liabilities that are based on actuarial calculations, where we need to basically take a look at those actuarial reports and ensure that they're recorded properly in the university's financial statements. Compensated absences, I'll go over in a few slides, but there's a new standard this year as it relates to how an entity estimates its liability for sick and vacation time, those types of time off that are accumulated. And liability completeness, we do procedures such as a search for unrecorded liabilities, confirming debt, and various other procedures over the liabilities. Next slide, please. Based on our audit procedures, we issued an unmodified audit opinion. That is the highest level of assurance that we can provide as an independent CPA firm. And as I noted earlier, no single audit this year due to the state not selecting a major program at the university. And in terms of internal controls, we did not identify any material weaknesses in internal controls. However, we have to say that an audit isn't designed to find all material weaknesses. So it's not an opinion on internal controls, but based on our audit procedures, we did not find any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in the internal control structure. Next slide, please. So management letter, these are comments that don't, in the internal control structure, that don't reach the significance of a significant deficiency or material weakness. And I should define those. I've used those terms quite a bit. We define a material weakness as a control either doesn't exist or isn't operating. In our opinion, that there could be a material misstatement that the control would not catch. And a significant deficiency is defined as less severe than a material weakness, but important enough to report to this group. We did not have any deficiencies in those categories. However, we did have the next level down, which we call management letter recommendations, and that was related to an entry that was recorded related to a subscription-based information technology arrangement. That's a fancy way of saying we have a contract that gives us the right to use software over a period of time. And there was one agreement that we looked at that didn't meet the definition for accounting as an asset and a liability. So there was an audit adjustment required to remove that contract. And it was a bit unusual in that the required payments had started, but because the software wasn't placed into service and wasn't, couldn't be utilized at this point, it didn't meet the recognition criteria of an asset and related liability. So the audit adjustment for the most part was a reduction in asset and a reduction in liability. For the work our IT specialists did, we did not have any findings to report. A couple of best practice recommendations, but those are just exactly that, best practice recommendations, no findings or issues there. Next slide, please. Those required governance communications that I alluded to earlier, we did not have any changes in the scope of our audit. What we were engaged to do is what we did and then issued our audit opinion accordingly. We found all the note disclosures to be clear and consistent. We do express an opinion on those footnote disclosures. There were two what we call emphasis of matter paragraphs in your standard audit report. And the first one was related to the adoption of a new accounting standard over compensated absences, where the rules changed a little bit and the university was required to use a different set of criteria and threshold to see when and how much of a liability should be recorded. It's a lower threshold than it used to be. The standard defines it as if you have accumulated time, is it more likely than not that it will be used or paid in a future period? So paid is pretty cut and dry. We either have that or don't have that written in our policies that any accumulated unused compensated absence will be paid in the future. Used is a little bit more of a trickier estimate in that you kind of have to look at past results and say, okay, if we're accumulating, say, sick time, and based on historical results, are people using that? Or is it being banked and that bank is increasing and they end up retiring and never using it? And that's the analysis management had to do this year. Because it's a lower threshold than the old standard, the liability did increase this year, including a restatement of beginning net position for the change in the accounting principle. But the audit procedures that we performed found no issues with how management is making that estimate. The other emphasis of matter paragraph is related to the Research Foundation, which in previous years was recorded as a discretely presented component unit. This year, it was management determined that their financial information was not overly significant to the university, and it is not displayed this year as a discretely presented component unit. So there's a emphasis on matter paragraph in that standard audit opinion saying that that decision was made and that beginning net position for the component units was restated accordingly. The genesis of that decision were some issues that the Research Foundation audit ran into, not being able to be completed on a timely basis. And we agree with management's conclusion. However, we have a past audit adjustment for not including the foundation, which is basically just management concluded, and we concurred that it's not material to the overall reporting entity. We didn't have any disagreements with management during the performance of our audit. We're not aware of management consulting with any other independent CPAs on accounting or auditing treatments. The estimates, I talked about a few of them earlier, but it's important to note that they are estimates and they can change significantly in the future based on various factors such as economic conditions and so on and so forth. So again, we didn't see any issue with how they were calculated as of June 30th, but they can change due to external factors. The audit adjustment I previously talked about in the management letter comment, but the total amount of the adjustment was approximately 10 million reduction in assets and 11 million reduction in the liability. Management was provided a representation letter for signature, basically saying that all the information they provided was true and accurate to the best of their knowledge, and that they responded truthfully to all the audit inquiries that were made. Next slide, please. So what's going on in the industry? Some of these are repeats for those of you who have been around for a few years for these audit presentations, and some are new, but I think the biggest point is uncertainty with regulations coming from Washington, D.C. on higher education. I noted that we're not doing a single audit this year, but because the state didn't select a major program, but if we were, we really couldn't finish that anyway, because the federal government issues what's called a compliance supplement each year, and that's the big document that tells independent auditors what they want us to test with their federal grants. That's usually issued in the May timeframe. That has not been issued as of today. So there's a big delay right now in those federal programs, but that's just one example with things that are uncertain and changes from Washington. Going forward, what's going on with those indirect cost rates, what's going on with other compliance matters that we've all seen in the news. We're still seeing some enrollment pressures, and it varies from region to region, but institution to institution, but there does seem to be a increase in competition of getting those freshmen registered and coming to an institution due to the fact that there's fewer high school graduates than previous years. We're still seeing the bad actors who try to hack systems and either hold them for ransom or use that third-party data. We're still seeing a lot of that. Unfortunately, they seem to be getting better and better at what they do, and the costs of combating those third-party bad actors is increasing because the risk is continuing to increase. Next slide, please. And we can move on. I think this is a slide on the standard that we talked about, that compensated absence standard. So next slide, please. We can probably breeze over that because I went over it in the previous slide. Next slide, please. This is a QR code. We do a higher education virtual conference every winter. Should you be interested, I promise there's only one session on accounting and compliance, and I'm doing it. So if you see me, just tune out. But the rest of the sessions are general higher education related and may be of interest. So you have a QR code there if you're interested in attending. Those are the end of our formal remarks. Be more than happy to take any questions anyone may have.
Thanks, Mike. Nothing like audits first thing in the morning to go over. Really gets the blood flowing. What questions do we have?
Hi, it's Margot. Thanks for the report. Have you seen, I know we haven't applied anything yet that relates to the changes coming out of Washington or regulations, but have you seen it with other clients yet, or any changes in what you're required to audit?
No, not at this point. We have not. The only changes that are impacting the audit process are if certain schools received letters that are claiming non-compliance and the possibility of a liability due back to the government. We've had, it's rare, but we've had a handful of those. It'll be interesting to see when this compliance supplement is released on the grant side, if they're going to add anything new that hasn't been required in the past. But as I noted, we're 5 months overdue right now, and I guess fortunately for this year, the state didn't select a major program for the university, so we don't have to be concerned with that this year. But it'll be interesting to see if the delays related to any changes they're making to that document.
Thanks.
What are the questions? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Mike, for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. We'll move on to the second item of discussion, and that's the enterprise risk management update on enterprise compliance. Turn it over to Abby and Kara, who will lead us through that.
Great, thank you. So we tend to at IRCC try to pick topics to give you an update on what we're doing to minimize risk and to manage compliance at the university. Today, we wanted to just give you a very broad overview of our enterprise compliance office. Enterprise compliance is essentially akin to an internal audit office, although we fall under the state's Office of the Auditor General. So we don't have our own internal audit, but this office functions in that capacity. So we have our AVP for Enterprise Risk Management, Kara Larson, here, who oversees enterprise compliance. And we're going to walk through a presentation by Lindsay Nottage, who's our Director of Enterprise Compliance, who manages this office. And she'll speak at a very high level about the functions that the office undertakes. Obviously, a lot of the information they do is very sensitive, so we're not going to get into details about actual activities, but wanted to give you a sense of the structure we have in place if we do run into any of the issues that you just heard Mike talk about, and we have concerns about internal controls or management concerns, how we sort of go about approaching those. So with that, unless Kara, you have anything to add, I was going to just turn it right over to Lindsay.
Nope, we're ready for Lindsay.
Okay,
All right.
great.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity to present to the committee today. Over the next few minutes, I'll share some key highlights and successes from the work that we performed as part of the Enterprise Compliance Program over the past year. And this is work that demonstrates our commitment to strengthening the university's compliance environment and managing institutional risk. If you can flip to the next slide. So I'll first begin with just a brief refresher on the enterprise compliance mission. And the office seeks to help safeguard the integrity of our institution and promote a culture of compliance, transparency, and accountability. And this is in line with the university's foundational values, which promote self and institutional reflection, holding ourselves accountable to high standards. University leadership, the Enterprise Compliance Office, and compliance partners across the institution are committed to maintaining a robust compliance environment as we navigate the increasingly complex and evolving regulatory landscape. Next slide. So the office acts as a hub to connect and collaborate with subject matter experts across various departments to integrate and enhance compliance into daily operations. It allows for a more strategic and coordinated approach to identifying and mitigating compliance risks, responding to regulatory changes, and enhancing processes. So we'll share some examples of this shortly. The office also evaluates compliance risks and control environments through gap assessments and compliance reviews, as well as shares advice and makes recommendations on enhancements and opportunities where identified. So this collaborative hub and approach has worked well so far in adapting to the regulatory landscape. Next slide. So I'd like to share some specific accomplishments from the past year, and this is organized around 4 of the U.S. Department of Justice essential elements of an effective compliance program. So the first is strengthening processes, and one of the ways we continuously work to strengthen our processes is through policies and procedure development and enhancement. We have several draft and policies and procedures in the pipeline, and these range from internal department-only focused policies to more formal university-wide administrative and then board-approved policies. And in particular, I want to mention the required strong collaboration that occurs across the university that comes about in many different ways and reflects how we're adapting and responding timely to changes. The first is the policy on hazing, and this policy is a result of the Stop Campus Hazing Act that was signed into law on December of 2024, just under a year ago. The new law mandates greater transparency and accountability regarding hazing incidents in higher education institutions, and specifically requires a policy and prevention program. So we had been tracking this one before it became law, and the Dean of Students took the lead role, and we formed a team of partners across the university. So while we had elements of the policy already sort of baked into our processes, they needed greater clarity and accountability. And we also needed to formalize a prevention program and roll out training. So the team of partners did a really fantastic job gathering insights, working collaboratively together, and to get this in place in advance of the June 30th deadline of this year. The next policy is our conflict of interest and commitment policy, which is actually teed up for board approval in a few weeks. And this policy is essentially replacing our current policy on ethics and conflict of interest, which through feedback we learned was difficult for employees to understand and know how it relates to them. And in this situation, we really wanted to adapt the policy to make it simple and clear for employees and include examples that related to a university setting that they could best identify with. So throughout the new policy development process, we've received great feedback and input into it, and we're working on preparing and rolling out procedures, training, guidance, and tools to really help support this. And the third is the policy on rights of students pursuant to FERPA, and this is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And FERPA has been around for a while to protect the privacy of students. Elements of the policy, procedure, training content have been really embedded within the different functions across the university who were impacted and involved in the process. But we found through review that because it was generally developed in silos, the content and messaging wasn't always consistent. And we really needed to establish the clear, we also needed to establish clear institutional guidelines and definitions where the federal law defers to institutional interpretation. Along with this policy, we're working on procedures and educational content, and it's currently making its way through our internal administrative policy review committee and is on track for the president's approval sometime in January. So whether it's addressing regulatory changes, employee feedback, or identified gaps, we're committed to continuously evaluating the needs and identifying opportunities for improvement in our policies, and then extending that to procedures and training. So the next element is monitoring our regulatory landscape, and we maintain an active, continuous oversight of both compliance reporting obligations and evolving regulatory requirements. And we're tracking over 90 regulatory related reports, disclosures, and certifications. The vast majority of these are integrated into standard operational processes and have good controls in place to ensure they're completed timely and accurately. They have accountable owners, for the most part, a point of contact within their respective reporting agency, and they're monitoring for changes or updates to their process. We work closely with legal counsel and various internal and external sources to stay ahead of regulatory changes and take actions when notified. And this Stop Campus Hazing Act that I just mentioned was one of those examples of kind of jumping in, taking quick action, and making sure we responded timely to that. Also, very recently, we saw a few changes to the Rhode Island Code of Ethics, the gift rule, and the definition of interested persons, which becomes effective on January 1st. So we also had anticipated this, and we responded and reviewed our content and material, made updates in preparation for that January effective date. So through this proactive monitoring, we're hoping to remain ahead of regulatory changes wherever possible. While we recognize that staying ahead isn't always feasible, we do remain committed to minimizing compliance risks to the greatest extent possible. The third category is promoting ethical behavior. And so this year marked our third annual ethics awareness campaign. We achieved a milestone with over 350 employees engaging in material on our website, completing training sessions, and viewing curated video content. And each year, the campaign is thoughtfully planned and designed to reach a broad audience with simple but meaningful content and messaging across various platforms and communication channels. This year, we had leadership support at all levels that were actively supporting the campaign and helping to disseminate communications within their areas. One of our primary goals was to really educate employees about their responsibility to speak up and report concerns. And employees may utilize multiple reporting channels to do that, including their direct supervisor, internal reporting systems, or our third-party ethics hotline, which provides an option for anonymous reporting. So this campaign is a core component of our compliance program, and it's designed to ensure that all employees understand their roles and responsibilities in fostering a strong ethical culture. And finally, conducting investigations. At any given point, we generally have 1 to 2 investigations or compliance reviews in process. So through the awareness campaign and other outreach efforts, we're actively promoting the ethics hotline, and it's become a valuable and healthy reporting path with great engagement. And we have a formal process for reviewing and responding to reports that are received, and that's facilitated by the third-party case management system that we use. My role as the ethics hotline administrator, I am responsible for reviewing all incoming reports to ensure that they're directed to the appropriate individual or departments that have the expertise to manage and respond to the concerns. And I'll generally review matters that involve compliance with legal, regulatory, or policy requirements in consultation with any subject matter experts and the Office of General Counsel. Compliance reviews and investigations are also initiated through various other channels or maybe requested by leadership. And they're really designed to gather relevant facts and information for leadership to make decisions. They may identify control gaps or weaknesses and often result in a management plan or action steps to remediate any findings. One such review we did hope to highlight the need for a university-wide fleet vehicle management program. And the use of university fleet vehicles was a highly decentralized process with insufficient monitoring controls and oversight. And so the review that was performed identified some gaps with maintaining compliance requirements, and management acted upon those quickly by establishing a new fleet manager position who is implementing controls now and really leading in the development of a more formal program. So all these efforts are accomplished through strong partnerships and collaboration across the university. Since establishment 4 years ago, the Compliance Office has laid a robust foundation. We continue to evolve, adapt, and mature the program, and really ensuring it is aligned and supports the university in executing its strategic mission, and are always open to feedback and suggestions. With that, the next slide, happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Lindsay. That's it's really important work. What questions do we have?
Lindsay, could I ask about the hazing business? Is that across the country? How do we see it? Is it going down? Is it staying flat? Is it just growing with population? Or
Yeah, so the one thing that came out with Stop Campus Hazing Act was a transparency report, and some institutions had already been reporting their hazing incidents. So we just started reporting that as well. And from what I understand, and I can kind of check with the Dean of Students, I think we're pretty, comparable across to others.
okay.
What else? All right, Lindsay, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
The next order of business is agenda item 3, executive session. May I have a motion that the committee convene into executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 4246(5)(a)(2) for discussion regarding an annual report on litigation, including all federal, state, and administrative proceedings currently pending or that were resolved after June 30th, 2024, and potential and anticipated litigation.
David Marano, so moved.
Thank you, David. Is there a second to the motion?
Joe second.
Thank you, Joe. Any discussion on the motion? There being no discussion, I would ask for a voice vote. All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, hearing none, the motion is approved. The committee will now convene into executive session for the reasons specified. It is anticipated that the executive session will last approximately 30 minutes, after which the committee will reconvene in open session. The live stream will be paused during the executive session and will resume once the executive session has ended and the committee reconvenes in open session. For all those participating via WebEx, please confirm by saying yes that no other person is present and or able to hear the discussion at the remote location. If you do not automatically move into the breakout session, join the session when prompted on your computer screen by clicking on the Join Now button. Attendees not participating in the executive session will be moved to a waiting room. So please confirm yes that no other person is present or able to hear the discussion at your location.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I think we're ready to
Okay, Matt, we're live.
Great. The committee is now convened in open session. The first order of business is in open session is a motion to seal the executive session minutes. May I have a motion?
You're on
Joe,
mute,
you
Joe.
are on mute. I saw him. Do I need to hear him?
I'll
For the
second
record.
the motion that Joe made. David Monorano.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion to seal the minutes? I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. All opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is approved. The next order of business is agenda item 4, adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Joe's on
You're still on mute,
mute.
but I hear you.
I'll second Joe's a motion to
Matt's
adjourn.
becoming a lip reader.
Yes, I am. I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion to adjourn is approved. The next meeting of the Institutional Risk and Compliance Committee is scheduled for February 9th, 2026. All right. Thank you all.
Good job, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you.